Hey everybody, I've received quite a few questions in regards to laptop maintenance and how to keep your laptop running in tip-top shape. So I figured I'd make a video showing you several different laptops, how they're put together, how to get into them, and how to maintain them so that you don't have any more problems than necessary. Laptops by nature are compressed versions of desktops, so you're taking all the hardware that you normally get in a desktop and you're compressing it into an incredibly thin frame. And when you do that, you create several problems, not the least of which is heat. And there's no airflow. So with the lack of airflow, the heat builds up, and also with the lack of airflow, dust and junk builds up inside. When dust and junk builds up inside your laptop, then you start having problems. The system itself struggles to breathe, and it also makes it difficult for things to work properly. As laptops heat up, they start to slow down, they have errors, they'll spontaneously shut down, among a number of other problems. Worst case scenario, your laptop, if it gets too clogged up and the system overheats too much, what you can do is you can actually fry the GPU or the CPU on your board, which is the last thing you want to do. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at a few different laptops, how they're built, how to get inside of them and clean them out so that you can best keep them running. I brought a number of different laptops to the table here to show, mainly because they're from different manufacturers and different builds, and this represents the majority of the laptops on the market. I did leave Asus and Lenovo out. I apologize. I didn't go buy a couple for the purpose of this. This just happens to be laptops we have in-house. So this is a very common, newer laptop. This is an HP 7000. And then another HP here, an older HP, but a very, very common sold one. This is an HP 2000, exceptionally popular model, sold at Target, Walmart, Best Buy, every major chain you can think of. Then we've got a Dell here. This is an Dell N5 series, a very, very common laptop, low end. And then a higher end, this is a high-end laptop. This is a HP DV6. So the DV6 series, it's a $61.99 US. And then this is actually my laptop. This is my daily driver. This is an MSI. And then we've got a Toshiba here, Toshiba 5 series. And then the ever popular MacBook Pro. This is a MacBook Pro 2011. So with that said, we'll go through each of these laptops, take a look at how to get inside them and clean them out so that you are having the fewest problems possible. Once again, proper maintenance of your computer, whether it's a PC, Mac, or laptop, proper maintenance of it will prevent you from having to have unnecessary repairs done later, which are much more costly. Before we get into that, one of the things I wanted to mention is we talked about before, one of my previous videos, about airflow in a computer. And as we mentioned with laptops, because they are such a slim form factor and it is difficult for them to breathe, one of the most important things you can do for a laptop is use it in the proper way. If your laptop sits on blankets, sits on pillows, couches, if you're setting your laptop anywhere where it's blocking the ports on the bottom that air goes through, then what you're going to do is create problems for it to breathing. You'll notice these inlet ports on this laptop, intake ports. These are for it to pull air into the system, and then the fan on the side blows it out. If you're blocking these, the system can't breathe. It'll get very, very hot. I've seen people complain about their legs almost burning from the heat inside the laptop, things like that. And if you're having that problem, it's because you're not allowing the laptop to breathe. I highly recommend getting yourself a laptop pad, a little lap desk is what we call them. They sell them all over the place. You can buy these at Target, Walmart, Amazon, Best Buy. Just about anywhere they sell laptops, they sell these. They come in many different form factors. Most of them are very similar to this. It simply looks like a wedge. It's got rubber bumpers on it to keep the laptop steady on it. And it's curved to allow some elevation of the laptop when it's sitting on your lap. Now this one's from Cooler Master. The best ones are made from metal. There's a reason for that. Metal stays cool to the touch, but it also dissipates heat better than plastic. So in this particular instance, this Cooler Master has these holes all over it. And I don't have them in here right now, but this has two small fans that actually clip into the bottom of it that blow air up. and they have a little USB cord that connects to one of the USB ports on your laptop, and they'll actually blow air into the laptop as it sits on your lap. They're elevated to allow airflow. So the back here sits on your leg or a desk, wherever you're going to be setting, and it creates a cavity here for air to be pulled in through here. And then at that point, the air gets pulled onto the underside of your laptop and helps it breathe better. It is absolutely amazing the difference in the life of your laptop that having a unit like this will make. And keeping it cool and keeping it running smooth will prevent you from having to have costly repairs. In addition, one of the cool things about a unit like this is actually built. This unit is actually built to allow you to slide your laptop in when you're not using it. So, if you're about ready to take it on the go, just slide your laptop in it like that, and now you can take the whole thing on the go. So, very handy little unit. Like I said, this Cooler Master one is my preferred one. There are a number out there that are very, very similar. Some are almost identical. You can pick these up for anywhere between about 18 bucks and about $35, depending on how high-end. This one happens to be $29.99 because of the fans. There is a slightly larger one than this, not by much, just a smidge, and it comes with 3 fans, and that one is $39.99. So, like I said, it's a very, very small investment in the longevity and performance of your laptop. So, with that said, let's take a look at a couple of these and how you get inside them. Alright guys, so I'm going to move this one away real quick, and we're going to take a look at a couple of these laptops. We'll start with this. This is the HP DV6 7000. It's a higher end laptop. It's manufactured for the last couple of years. So when you look at the bottom of a laptop, there are a couple things you'll notice. There's almost always a bottom plate, okay? Here's your bottom of the laptop, here's your bottom plate, and your battery. And then other items of note are going to be these intake ports. These ports allow the laptop to pull air into the system and then blow it out. In many cases, on most laptops, the outlet port, or I should say the output port, is going to be on the sides, okay? Sometimes it's in the back. In this particular laptop, it has 2. Here's your intake ports, the output port. There's a big one right next to the fan here, and there's another large one on the side. So, show you how to get in and do what you need to do. Whenever you're going to work on a laptop, you always want to make sure you pull the battery first. Don't have any power connected to it, and make sure the battery is removed. So, there's always a catch release valve here. Just push it. Go ahead and remove your battery. Set it aside. And then, with most bottom plates, usually, in most cases, there's 1 or 2 screws holding things together. So, in this particular instance, you'll see here, there's 1 seat screw. So, we'll go ahead and undo this. And this one's spring-loaded, doesn't come out. Very handy, keeps the screw in it. You don't have to worry about losing it. And then you're just going to slide this down. And there you go. Real common design. When you pull the bottom plate, you've got access to your RAM, your Wi-Fi card, and your hard drive. And at this point, this is where you'd use your compressed air. You just take your can, blow it out, make sure there's no gunk, blow these vents and ports out. Make sure you're getting those nice and blown out if you see dust collecting in them. So if it's got a lot of buildup, I would recommend taking an old toothbrush and just lightly brushing the ports to make sure you're cleaning out any of the dust that's attempted to stick. You know, sometimes it doesn't just blow right out. And then go ahead and blow it out. So we'll put this one back together and I'll show you a couple other designs real quick. Next is another HP. This is a DV2000. This is a very common laptop. It's very inexpensive. It's sold by just about every major retailer. It comes in 2 variants. It comes in a Core and a Celeron variant. So once again, plate on the bottom. Now you notice this plate is split into 2. And then your fan, here's your inlet ports, and of course your output on the side. Let's go ahead and release our battery, and you'll notice on this particular unit, there's no screws. And that's because the screw itself is actually underneath the battery. So, in this case, we'll undo this screw. And voila, you have access here to your Wi-Fi and your memory. And this has a secondary screw for the second panel is actually hidden underneath the first. So take that out, and now we have access to our hard drive. Once again, blow everything out, make sure there's no dust accumulated all over things, just keep the dirt out of it, and snap it back together, and put everything away. Off and running. Okay. Here's another HP. This is the last of the HPs. I bring this one because this design, HP utilized this design in a number of laptops. It's not the most common, but you find it in a lot of their higher end laptops. So you see the bottom plate here. You see all of the intake ports, your battery, and then of course your output with the fan here. Let's pull this battery and I'll show you something. You'll notice there's no screws at all on this plate, and that's because this plate is actually just tension seated. That just means that it relies on the tension of the plate against some pins to hold it into place. Once you catch those, you can actually just pop the bottom plate right off. I've actually broke a few of the tabs over the years. This is actually my old laptop. It's now Melissa's. So there are a couple of the tabs have been broken over time, so it doesn't perfectly sit on there, but it's not a major deal. So, and once you take it off, once again, you got access to all your components, 2 hard drives, your RAM, and your Wi-Fi chip. So take it off, blow things out, get everything out of there, make sure you're getting these intake ports blown out, as well as your output fan, and you're good to go. While we're putting this one back together, it's also important to note, one of the most important components to make sure you blow out very well is this output fan, or the output port. The output port is where everything comes out of. So what you'll see in some laptops is a fairly good design in airflow, but so it pulls things through easy, but it builds up right here on the output port. So if all of the airflow is getting pulled into the system and it's clogging up and jamming here, you're just creating this huge pocket of hot air, and as that area here superheats, that heat will transfer all the way across your board. And the board itself can warp over time. Solder connections can split or separate, and in a worst case scenario, you can actually have a processor meltdown. So that's why you want to avoid it. So here's a Toshiba 5 series satellite, very, very common laptop as well, one of Toshiba's highest selling units. Been selling this series for a long time. It's the L55 series. It comes in a number of variants. You'll notice the way this one's done, it's all compartmentalized. And Toshiba's big on this. So you see your intake ports here, okay? And then there's several plates. This is actually your battery, as always. There's your release switch. So we'll pull that one out. And you'll notice there's 2 different plates and a ton of screws. You only need to undo the screws related to the plates that you're looking to remove. So we'll go ahead and take out this one. There's your RAM and your Wi-Fi card. And in this instance, your hard drive. Go ahead and blow everything out. Make sure it's nice and clean, as always. And you should be good to go. Let's put everything back together. And it can't hurt if you do have a buildup inside the machine. Say you blow everything off and you still see a fine coating of dust or a thick coating of gunk. This is going to be really common in smoking households. I've done a video before about what smoking does to your PC. We're not picking on anybody in particular. We're just making sure people are aware of the damage it causes to electronics. Smoking and electronics are not good friends. So if you're in a house where they're smoking, a lot of times you'll see that buildup doesn't come off very easy. Once you have everything taken apart, it can't hurt to, in those households, if you see that on there, that buildup, it can't hurt to take a Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol, get some full strength 70% alcohol and isopropyl, and go ahead and use the Q-tip to wipe off any junk. Only use alcohol, do not ever use any other cleaners or water. The reason is because that stuff sits on the board, and if there's even the tiniest drop of it still left on the board, when you go to power the system up, you'll short it. Alcohol, because of its high alcohol content, it evaporates exceptionally quickly, so it's a great cleaner. It'll wipe everything off, you'll be able to clean the gunk off of the components, and it'll dry well. If you have any concerns about whether or not it's fully dry, you can just let it air dry for a few hours just to make sure that there isn't any left on the board before you button everything back up. So here's a Dell. This isn't the N5010, this N series, very, very common laptop from Dell. I brought this one into the mix because it's a very unique design and it's different than most of the others. You'll notice there's no plates at the bottom of this one. Here's your intake port, your output port, and a battery. That's it. And that's because these are very low end. Excuse me, this is a 5040, not a 5010, but they're identical. They're very, very inexpensive laptops. They're actually not meant to be serviced. They build them cheaply. They build them to kind of run and die. So Dell designed these particular laptops and the family of these not to be serviceable. Once they go, time to move on to a new one. It's kind of a sad prospect in electronics, but it's what they do. So to show you what I'm talking about, this has actually, what is this, 4, 7, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17 screws on the bottom of this one just to get the bottom off. But it's not even that simple. There's those 17 screws, but then you have to actually pull the keyboard off. There are 3 set screws underneath the keyboard, and the top plate comes off. And then you can get to your additional components. Then you can get to your hard drive, fan, and the rest of the components. So this particular laptop, ones you find like this, they're not meant to be serviced. So in that case, what you can do to maintain them is make sure that you're blowing this out regularly. You know, I would do it even more so than you do on a serviceable laptop, just to make sure. So make sure you're blowing all the dust out of here and your output port, just to give your system every chance. A lot of people like to blow through the DVD drive, and just as on a side note, you can open your DVD drive, the slot, and you can blow. But don't forget, the DVD drive isn't actually, it's not a part of the system. This is a self-contained unit that slides in and out. So it's got a metal casing all over it. So blowing inside there is not going to do you any good. It'll clear dust out of the DVD drive if you happen to be having problems reading DVDs or discs. But it's not going to affect the system in any way, because what you're blowing air into is a self-contained unit that's all sealed. So this is an example of a laptop that once it starts to go south, it's meant to just be replaced. Now, here is mine. This is my daily driver. I absolutely love this machine. Exceptionally well designed. Take a look here. Let's pull my battery. And you'll notice on this particular unit that there are 1, 2, 3 screws to get into the bottom plate. But if you look carefully, there's also a 4th security screw that's underneath the battery. Now, I've removed a couple of them because I get in here occasionally to take a look at things, and I'll show you. So we take our screws out. Love the way this laptop's designed, because you can get to every single component under the bottom plate. So as soon as we take our bottom plate off, you'll notice the entirety of your laptop is accessible. So here's your RAM, your hard drive. This is the fan and heatsink assembly. So here's your CPU and your GPU, your Wi-Fi card, and then this is actually my primary hard drive. It's an mSATA SSD, or a solid state disk. So I've got a 512 gigabyte SSD and a hard drive. So this is what your operating system runs off of, and this is where I store data. It just makes the system exceptionally fast, very, 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 very fast. It's hard to describe how fast it makes it. But what I love about this is this gives you an opportunity to see how your laptop gets cooled. So your laptop, you have your CPU, your central processing unit, and your GPU, which is your graphics processing unit. Both of these units, when you're doing things on your computer, whether it be browsing the internet or working on files, they use power and they get hot. And if you're playing games, then the GPU kicks in over time and it gets exceptionally hot. If you're doing high-end mathematical calculations, things like Photoshop, programs like that, then the CPU will get extremely hot, and the GPU. These copper pipings that you see here, they all lead to a finned fan over here. So the copper actually draws, there's a thermal paste between each of these. It forms a cohesive bond with the processor below. And at that point, the copper draws the heat away and pulls it through the pipe over to these fins. And then the fan blows out through the fins, okay, through the gaps in between the fins where the heat collects, and it blows all the heat out. So this is how all laptops are cooled. It's a heatsink piping system, very, flat, condensed, that drags everything in front of a fan that blows it all out. So you can see when we're looking at this, you got your intake ports here to pull air into the system and right above the fan, and then the fan pushes it all out through this shield out through the side of the unit. So this gives you a good picture of exactly how laptops stay cool. So I love this design just because it gives me access to absolutely everything in the system that I need to look at to keep clean and blown out. So that's a great example. Now, we'll get to our last unit in this roundup of how does this all work. And we move on lastly to the MacBook Pro. This is a MacBook Pro 11-inch. The MacBook Pro is honestly, there we go, undeniably a feat of engineering. The MacBook Pro is designed with a very, very unique design in difference than all the other machines. You'll notice when we turn it over that there's no plates. There's also no intake valves at all. And that's because the MacBook Pro was designed to allow the case to be part of the heatsink. So you'll notice that the case itself is all aluminum. So they use an all aluminum machined aluminum case for a specific reason, because they wanted the case itself to help dissipate the heat and draw it away. So the case is a giant heatsink. It's a great design because it prevents you from having to have any external access to the system, such as intake ports, output ports. The design actually allows the system to stay cool, internally I should say, stay cool, but very, very rarely do you find much of a dust buildup inside of a MacBook. Because there's no ports pulling air through the system, you're not getting any of that airflow pulled through it, which means you're not getting the dust and particulates that come with it. Now the drawback is, MacBooks tend to get pretty hot, especially under power use. MacBooks tend to get pretty hot as you're using them. And that's because all of that heat that's generated under the, under the bottom plate on the processor and the GPU, all that heat gets pulled to this outer shell, the housing itself, to pull it off of the chips. So if you're doing things that are processor intensive, things like Photoshop, graphics design work, gaming, not that many gamers, I should say, on MacBooks, but when you do, the processor and the GPU heat up exceptionally, and at that point, all of that heat is drawn to the case. The case itself actually gets pretty hot, which it can be thought of as a drawback, but still, overall, the design itself is genius. It just makes for a very nice sealed unit. Obviously, they're quite light compared to some laptops, but they're thin. And it just makes for a very nice design aesthetic. And it was a genius design because very rarely do you need to get in there and clean it out. I've only seen a couple MacBooks that had a buildup of dust in it, and that's usually because the case has somehow been damaged. You've got people with damaged corners, things like that, especially along this side here where the ports are. And this is probably the most potential point of access for dust and dirt on any MacBook. So if you're going to do any cleanup on there, just blow these ports out really well. Take a small toothbrush and make sure that they're cleaned out very, very well. Blow it out with some compressed air, and you should be good to go. So, that gives you a picture of laptops, how they come apart, how the different ones are built. Most laptops you'll find on the market fall under one of these design types. It sometimes can seem like a daunting task to get into and work on your laptop, but that tiny little bit of maintenance, all you need is a small screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, and a can of compressed air, and you can save yourself a bunch of trouble. I forgot to grab the compressed air, 1 second. Speaking of compressed air, I've had people ask before, oh, but I don't know, I don't go to computer stores, I don't know where to get compressed air. This is what it looks like. It's simply a can with a hose. It looks like WD-40. You can buy this just about anywhere. You can buy it at Walmart, you can buy it at Target, you can buy it at Best Buy. I recommend not buying this at Best Buy. It comes in a couple different brands. Dust Off is one of the most common. If you buy it at Best Buy, you'll pay $10 per can. And the cans are slightly smaller. You can actually buy this as a 3-pack from Walmart. So you get all 3 cans. They're all bundled together with plastic for $11.99. One of the best investments you'll ever buy if you own electronics. It gives you 3 cans for using to occasionally dust off and dust out your electronics, whether it's your computer, your LCD TV, your desktop, your audio components, anything that generates heat and gets hot. So this allows you to blow it out and dust it off and make sure that things are well maintained. So there's your compressed air. Like I said, buy it at Walmart or Target. I prefer Walmart just because it's cheaper. Just don't get it at Best Buy because it's so expensive. So there you go. If you guys have questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you.